Hi everyone, it's me, Tetsuro. I hope you'll forgive the voiceover, but I thought I'd give you a break from staring at my face and instead give you this lovely animated wallpaper to gaze at as I share with you some of my personal favorite moments from these past couple of days. Now, just a bit of a qualifier for you. Not only is my curation highly subjective, but this selection is also very much incomplete in that several sessions where incredible things happened were not recorded in order to respect participant wishes. So, what follows are four moments that were lucky enough to be recorded and where we were able to get permission to share them with you. So, to kick things off, we offer you the first memorable moment from the first few minutes from our opening session.
I've completely lost my lines. I don't know where they are.
If you look at the bottom right hand corner of the screen, you can see that the time code is still running. In other words, this is not paused. For George and I, this was very awkward silence.
These minutes. Look.
Now keep your eye on the top right hand corner of the screen. As you will see, George and I are about to make an unscripted cameo.
Orsino in 12th Night.
Should we not have clicked on that camera icon? Oh dear. At this point, we text Chris to please do something.
He doesn't know that I can hear him mumble the play-by-play inside that garage.
Hi everyone, we're stopping the video. Technical difficulties. Technical difficulties.
Chris Cook, everyone. Chris's soothing manner was the perfect antidote to our state of agitation. From the very beginning, we all agreed that we wanted this symposium to be as non hierarchical as possible in the spirit of RbT. The only downside? No inspiring keynote. But thankfully, we got one anyhow. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with our Scott Button, let me tell you a little bit about him. If the Research Based Theater Collaborative is a family, then Scott is our dashing cousin. Not only is Scott an extremely talented playwright, he has such beautiful manners. Scott never comes empty handed. The gift he brought us this time? An essay he wrote, which, to my mind, was our symposium's unofficial keynote. Yes, Scott, you can add that to your CV. Scott's talk took place on the morning of the second day of our symposium. Here is a 5-minute excerpt. Enjoy.
When I was researching the RCMP's state-mandated war against LGBTQ2S plus people, which lasted for decades, the era's bleakness made it tempting to craft a story that was loaded with trauma. But I think that would be a shallow analysis of queer history. The 1950s were horrific for anyone who wasn't part of the dominant homogenous culture, and queer people had a really difficult time. Outings, sodomy laws contributed to a life of rigid assimilation for even the most privileged gay people. Meanwhile, queers of color waged a two-front war: the fight for their fundamental human rights, as well as a search for safe places to love each other. And for queers of color all over the world, particularly for trans and gender nonconforming folks, these battles are still being waged today. Yet, during my research on the queer purge, I started to discover other truths, not one centered on brutality and self-betrayal, but stories of love, of naughtiness, of fun, of vitality and resistance. These are also queer histories that mattered, and they should also be remembered. In approaching such a loaded historical moment, using genre as a framework made sense to me. As I hope you picked up on from the trailer, there's a kind of film noir aesthetic that sort of runs through Night Passing. And I think it really comes alive in the audio drama really beautifully. In the sound design by Murray Price, directed by Ashley Corcoran, and with the wonderful actors that we had. Many of us know the tropes of film noir, the fashions, the shadows, the jazz, even if we don't have direct experience with the genre itself. In film noir, the characters are basically archetypes. They know who they are in the world. There's a sense of irony to them, to the femme fatale, to the corrupt cop. And this self-awareness actually kind of reminds me of the state of irony that queer people inhabit in straight society. Anyone who lives outside of the majority demonstrates this kind of social irony. It's an awareness of the performativity of what they do every day. Our daily life is often made up of a conscious choice to assimilate or to resist. And I just wanted to end today with sharing that I dedicate Night Passing to queers of the past and of the future. And as Jose Esteban Munoz argues in Cruising Utopia, LGBTQ2S plus folks of right now must always have an eye both in front of us and behind us. To the queers who loved and fought for our present selves, and the ones who carry the torch to a more expansive future. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Next up, we have Smengele, offering us moments of pure spontaneity from the Q&A portion of her afternoon session, which took place during the afternoon, also on day 2. Here is Smengele.
Awesome. Great.
You have a question from Kyle there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like me to read it aloud?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Kyle says, thank you, Smangeli. You reminded me of a moment in my life when I had to open up a space for a group of people with hearing impairments. It was early in the morning and they were joking amongst each other in sign. I couldn't understand the jokes, but enjoyed the sound of laughter, curiously heard by me without context. How does humor work in your research? What gesture shows when a joke lands with someone in an audience?
Wow. That's an amazing question. Holy. Wow. I have to think about this one. On your question. Wow. How does humor work in my research, and what gesture shows when a joke lands with someone in an audience? So context driven. Now, a joke in the hearing community lands because of the vocal inflection, because of the timing, because of eye contact, or the words, or the double entendre. That is almost similar, but visual when it comes to the deaf community or working with my deaf participants. I want to give an example, but you wouldn't understand what I'm saying because the English equivalent is the South African English equivalent, and then you wouldn't understand. Let me try and make. Okay. Hold on. Everybody, just hold on for a second. No more little me. Now, I have a deaf friend, and every time I see him, so it's always like, hi, how are you doing? Fine. Haven't seen you in a long while. What are you doing? And then he'll always say something along the lines of, so if you would look at it, you would be like, you're flying, and a hearing person, they would look at it as like flying wings, but in the Black community, the hearing community, as well as the Black deaf community, this means you are incredibly, what's the word, forward, gregarious. You were just too hyperactive. You were just too out there. And he will say it in a way where it's just very much like, I can't stand you so forward. You're just so funny. It's just, you. And that's like the best way that I can explain. So if you look at the 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 pace of the sign, the location, the direction. These are just like basic things about like how what constitutes as a sign, what you can understand to like what makes a sign a sign. So there are things like that where you can just be like the pace of a sign, the location of a sign, the an adjacent facial expression with a sign that could help to make a joke land in sign language. I hope that was useful.
Before I share my final favorite moment with you, I just want to point out that one of the things we were concerned about as we planned this symposium was that by going completely virtual, there just wouldn't be the same opportunities for all those unexpected connections that happen between sessions, all those unplanned conversations that take place as we stroll from one site to another. To paraphrase Leonard Cohen, these kinds of cracks are important because that is how the light gets in. Well, I'm happy to report that such illuminating moments still happened. And just so you're in the know for the next time, here's a word to the wise. When a session ends, if your schedule permits, stick around and linger, because then you'll get to witness moments like this, which happened after Jenny and George were finally able to share their stories enthroned and brothers. So join me as we circle back to our opening session, or rather, the moments immediately following our opening session. Here's our dear friend, Lynn Fells.
Well, now what? And I just finished reading Jordan Cannahill's book, Theater of the Unimpressed. And he says, I'm so tired of theater that has a beginning, middle, end. And, you know everyone's going to get through it. Zoom introduces, Zoom theater, whatever we want to call it, introduces the uncertainty, the edge of the seat, falling into the play of creating theater together. And so I'm almost sorry I didn't hop on my bicycle. I am sorry, So then what would you do? I mean, the crow could be your brother if we're going to talk about a nudge from the sky, And then what happens then, right? Do you begin talking to your brother? So to introduce interruptions to the script as part of the invitation of Zoom to this kind of theater is to allow us to not expect things to be perfect, but to invite, well, Celeste would call, as from her show, the perfect imperfections, and go, now what? What happens? How do we hold this space and each other and witnessing here and now in this moment? The other thing that I have learned from doing this work on Zoom with my colleagues and students, young artists, is that it's full of surprises. And it's absolutely what you said, the new generation are the artists who are going to come into this media and surprise us and invite us to get out of our own scripts, however innovative we imagine ourselves to be or pride ourselves to be. So I'm very humbled by this moment of what you've been offering and are offering with such generosity and heart. And Jenny and George, those are extraordinary stories of love and heartbreak, and you offer them to us. And we're not there to hold you, as Jenny says. It's just a name, a black box. And so how do we care for each other? So there's a question of the ethics of sitting here at home and hearing such difficult stories that are unique and yet shared in so many different ways. And how do we do that sharing together, whether there's an opening in the chat or maybe the talk back, or reminds me of David Diamond's, who's the supporting in the room. Because we're witnesses as audience. We're also in those spaces and pauses, holding our breath, releasing our breath, terrified to take the next breath. So those are some of the questions that I was sitting with as I was on the edge of my seat. So thank you for this gift of your work this morning.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Lynn. I think that's a good something we should bring in our further discussions, is how do we take care, because the abruptness of when people leave, you hit that red box, leave, all of a sudden it's like, and then sometimes you're left, ironically, with a lot. And as probably people have different techniques, but often is if I'm chairing a meeting and I know that there's kind of residual, is that if people want to stay on informally, that invitation to stay on, to kind of unpack, I think is critical, and maybe it should be part of the ethics of this kind of work.
Thank you, Lynn, for giving me permission to share your spontaneous reflections. Every time you open your mouth, I always think of you as our poet laureate. So those were just some of my personal favorite moments where my camera just happened to be recording. I still wish I could have captured some of the magic from Lon and Graham's sessions, which happened in camera, but not on camera. So at this point, I'd like to conclude this fond looking back by asking, what were some of your favorite moments? And would you consider sharing them with us? And what they meant to you? What questions came up for you as we collectively look forward? Thanks for watching.